Dante Voss hated political meetings. He wasn't a diplomat. Not really. He was a problem solver, a man sent into impossible situations to make something work. And now, the United Earth Confederation had sent him to Veltrax 9, a frozen wasteland ruled by the warlike Veltraxi species. His job: negotiate peace with a race that considered human emotions a weakness. The meeting hall was as cold as the planet outside. Smooth black walls curved upward into a high ceiling, giving the impression that the room itself was watching. Veltraxi officers lined the chamber, their faces unreadable. The Veltraxi were taller than humans, their dark blue skin marked with lines of silver, their sharp, angular faces always set in a permanent expression of disinterest. And at the center of it all sat Xyra Velquin, the infamous Ice Queen of Veltrax 9. Dante had read her file. A brilliant tactician, utterly ruthless, completely devoid of emotion. No one had ever seen her smile. Some said she wasn't even capable of it. She was dressed in a sleek black uniform, her violet eyes locked onto him like a predator sizing up prey. Admiral Rithor, her superior, spoke first. "Human, state your case quickly. We do not waste time." Dante leaned back in his chair, offering a slow smile. "Well, Admiral, that's the thing about humans. We do waste time. We talk, we laugh, we drink too much, and sometimes we even make friends." He gestured around the room. "I can tell that's not how things work here, huh?" Silence. Not a single reaction. Tough crowd. Zyra's gaze narrowed. "You think this is amusing?" Dante shrugged. "Not yet, but give it time." The Veltraxi were a warrior race, and their government wanted to expand into human-controlled space. The Earth Confederation had sent Dante to talk them down before war became inevitable. But diplomacy only worked if both sides wanted peace, and from the way Xyra stared at him, he wasn't sure they did. Admiral Rithor leaned forward. "The Veltraxi do not negotiate through humor, human. We respect strength, logic, and efficiency. We do not engage in pointless banter." Dante nodded. "Got it. No fun allowed." He sighed dramatically. "You know, I once visited a planet where they banned all jokes. The government said humor made people weak. You know what happened?" No one answered. "They overthrew the government," Dante finished. "Turns out, people really hate being told what they can laugh at." Still nothing. The Veltraxi were like statues. Unshakable, unbreakable. Except for one. Dante caught the faintest twitch at the corner of Xyra's lips. It was so small, so brief, that he almost missed it. But he didn't. She almost smiled. That was interesting. Dante leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "Tell me something, Commander. Do Veltraxi ever laugh?" Xyra's expression darkened. "Laughter is pointless, but not impossible," Dante murmured. For the first time, she looked away. "Interesting." Admiral Rithor cleared his throat, annoyed. "Enough of this nonsense. You have one chance to surrender the disputed territories, or we will take them by force." Dante sighed. There it was. The real reason he was here. The Veltraxi weren't interested in peace. They wanted control. He could try to argue, but he knew how these things worked. Instead, he smirked. "You know what, Admiral? I think I'll take my chances." Rithor's jaw tightened, but Dante wasn't looking at him anymore. He was watching Xyra. And this time, when he made his next joke, he knew she'd be listening. Dante Voss sat in the cold chamber, his mind racing. The Veltraxi weren't interested in negotiations. They wanted dominance. But there was one weakness in the room, and it wasn't military strategy or political pressure. It was Xyra Velquin. She had almost laughed. That meant something. Dante leaned back in his chair, letting the silence stretch. The Veltraxi thrived on intimidation, but humans had their own ways of pushing back. Admiral Rithor's patience was wearing thin. "Human, if you have no real offer, you are wasting our time." Dante smirked. "See, that's the thing, Admiral. Time isn't wasted when it's used well. He pointed at Syra without looking away from Rithor. And I think she knows that. Zyra's sharp violet eyes flickered to him. It was brief, but Dante caught the hesitation. Rithor turned toward her, his expression unreadable. Commander Velquin, do you wish to add something? Zyra straightened in her chair. No. Her voice was sharp, but something had changed. Dante saw an opening. He decided to take a risk. You know, back on Earth, there's a saying. A meeting without coffee is just a hostage situation. Rithor frowned. What nonsense is this? Dante ignored him. He kept his eyes on Syra. I get it. Veltraxi don't do humor. No jokes, no distractions. Just pure efficiency. He tilted his head. But that's not entirely true, is it? Zyra's jaw tightened. What do you mean? Dante spread his hands. If laughter was completely useless, it wouldn't exist. Even among humans, it's more than just noise. It's survival. Stress relief. A weapon, even. He smiled. You study war, Kyra. You must know this. The room went silent. For a long moment, Syra didn't respond. Then she stood. Admiral Rithor, she said coolly, I request a private discussion with the human. Tactical reasons. Rithor frowned but nodded. As you wish, Commander. He shot Dante a glare. But if this is a waste of time, I will ensure your species suffers the consequences. Dante gave him a mock salute. Noted, Admiral. A few moments later, Dante and Syra were alone in a smaller, dimly lit room. The walls hummed softly, likely a privacy field to keep others from listening. Zyra crossed her arms. Explain. Dante grinned. Explain what? That you wanted to talk to me alone. Her gaze was cold. You are either foolish or incredibly perceptive. Perhaps both. I like to think I'm unpredictable, Dante said. Which, by the way, makes humans very hard to conquer. Just something to keep in mind. Zyra studied him for a long time. Then, in a quieter voice, she said, Why are you not afraid? Dante blinked. He hadn't expected that. Afraid of what? He asked. Us. The Veltraxi. You know we could crush your worlds. You know we do not tolerate weakness. And yet you sit here, smiling, joking. Do you not fear death? Dante leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Fear's useful, but only when it tells you something you don't already know. His voice softened. You're not going to kill me, Tyra. If you wanted to, I'd already be dead. Zyra's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. You are unusual, she admitted. I get that a lot, Dante said. Then he grinned. But if you think I'm unusual, wait till you meet the rest of humanity. And for just a second, so fast he almost missed it, she smiled. Dante leaned against the cold metal wall, watching Syra Velquin carefully. The infamous Ice Queen of Veltrax 9 stood with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable, but he had seen something, a crack in the armor. A tiny smile, gone in an instant, but real. And that meant she wasn't as emotionless as she pretended to be. Syra, for her part, was still studying him. Her violet eyes held the sharp intensity of someone analyzing a battlefield. You amuse yourself with words, human. But words will not stop war. Dante chuckled. No, but they can delay it long enough for better ideas to show up. He gestured toward her. And I think you already know that, or you wouldn't be talking to me alone. Her gaze flickered, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she took a step closer. You assume too much. Dante smirked. It's a habit, one that keeps me alive. Zyra exhaled slowly, as if deciding something. Humans are peculiar. I get that a lot, Dante said. She turned away, pacing slowly. The Veltraxi are bred for conquest. Strength is our foundation. We do not waste time with distractions like laughter. Dant raised an eyebrow. And yet you almost laughed back there. She stopped. For the first time, she looked genuinely caught off guard. You saw that. He grinned. Hard to miss. Her jaw tightened, but not in anger. It was something else. Hesitation, maybe. She shook her head. It was irrelevant. Dant stepped forward. No, it wasn't. It was human. And that's what scares you, isn't it? Zaira turned sharply, her eyes flashing. I fear nothing. Then why are we having this conversation? Dant asked, his voice softer now. Silence. Zaira didn't move for several long seconds. Then, in a voice almost too quiet to hear, she said, Veltraxi history speaks of a time before conquest, before war. My ancestors were not so cold. Dant tilted his head. So what changed? Zaira clenched her fists. We learned that strength is the only truth in the universe. Weakness leads to extinction. Dant nodded. Yeah, humanity learned that too. She frowned. And yet, you are not like us. He chuckled. That's where you're wrong. Humans fight. We kill. We conquer when we have to. But we also laugh. We also live. And that's why we're still here. Zaira studied him for a long time. You believe laughter is a weapon. It can be, Dant said. But it's also a shield. It's what keeps us going when everything else falls apart. She turned away again, staring at the wall as if searching for something unseen. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Less rigid, less rehearsed. If I were to laugh, would that make me weak? Dant's smile softened. No, it would make you stronger than anyone in this room. Zaira didn't respond right away. Then, with slow precision, she said, Tell me another joke, human. Dant grinned. Oh, I've got plenty. And for the first time in Veltraxi history, a warrior smiled. Dante leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table between them. Thyra Velquin, the cold, ruthless Veltraxi commander, had just asked him for a joke. Not an interrogation, not a demand, but a joke. If that wasn't progress, he didn't know what was. All right, Dant said, grinning. I'll start with an easy one. Why don't skeletons fight each other? Zaira's violet eyes narrowed. Skeletons are fragile. Combat between them would be ineffective. Dant chuckled. No, it's because they don't have the guts. Silence. Zaira stared at him, the Veltraxi warrior beside the door, stationed as a guard, blinked, clearly unsure of what just happened. Dant sighed. That was a warm-up. Okay, here's a better one. He leaned in. Why did the Veltraxi refuse to play hide-and-seek? Zaira crossed her arms. Because hiding is a sign of weakness. Nope, Dant said, smirking. Because good luck hiding when you're 8 feet tall and glowing. There was a pause. Then, Zaira exhaled sharply through her nose. It wasn't quite a laugh. Not yet, but Dante saw it. The struggle, the way her lips twitched ever so slightly. She understood the joke. Dante leaned back, satisfied. Admit it, that was funny. Zaira's expression remained neutral, but her voice held something different. It was unexpected. Dant grinned. That's the best kind of funny. The guard shifted uncomfortably, as if witnessing something forbidden. Veltraxi did not laugh. They did not joke. And yet, here was their high-ranking commander entertaining the idea. Zaira studied Dante for a long moment. You are unlike any human I have encountered. That's because I'm the best one, Dant said, winking. But don't tell the others. To his shock, Zaira let out a quiet huff. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a full laugh. But it was real. Dant's grin widened. See, you're getting it. First, a smirk. Now, a breath. If I keep going, you'll be rolling on the floor by tomorrow. Zaira shook her head, her expression returning to its usual calm. Do not assume victory so soon, human. Dant shrugged. Oh, I never assume. I just observe. And right now, I observe that you are curious. Zyra's gaze locked onto his. Curiosity is dangerous. Only if you're afraid of the answer, Dant said. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she sat back, as if reassessing him. Tell me, Dante Voss, why do humans rely so much on humor? Dant thought for a moment before answering. Because we have to. The universe is big, cold, and full of things trying to kill us. If we didn't laugh, we'd go insane. He paused. And sometimes, laughing is the only way to win. Zyra tilted her head. Win? Dant nodded. You can't control everything. You can't always overpower your enemies. But if you can make them laugh, even for a second, you control the moment. You break the tension. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything. Zyra didn't reply right away. She simply watched him, the gears in her mind turning. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, Fascinating. Dante smirked. Told you. For the first time in history, a Veltraxi warrior was learning to laugh. And Dante. He was just getting started. Dante leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching Zyra Velquin closely. The moment had passed, but it was still there. A shift, small but undeniable. The so-called Ice Queen of Veltrax 9 had almost laughed. Almost. Zyra, for her part, had gone quiet again, studying him like he was some sort of puzzle she couldn't quite solve. The Veltraxi were warriors, raised in a world where strength was everything. And yet here she was, entertaining the idea of humor. Tell me, she said finally, her voice steady but thoughtful. What is the purpose of this? Joking. Dante smirked. I told you. It keeps us sane. Makes life bearable. Zyra's sharp gaze didn't waver. But why do it with enemies? Dante shrugged. Because sometimes enemies don't have to stay enemies. Silence. Zyra leaned forward, her violet eyes narrowing. That is a dangerous belief, Dante Voss. The Veltraxi do not make peace with weakness. And yet you're still here, Dante countered. Still talking, still listening. If humor was so weak, you'd have dismissed me already. Zyra's jaw tightened. It was subtle, but Dante noticed. He was getting to her. You misunderstand, she said at last. I am here because I must understand my opponent. If laughter is a weapon, I must know how to counter it. Dante chuckled. Good luck with that. Zyra's eyes flashed with something. Curiosity, frustration, or maybe something she didn't even recognize yet. You believe laughter can disarm a warrior? She asked. Dante nodded. I know it can. Zyra exhaled slowly. Prove it. Dante grinned. All right. Picture this. A Veltraxi warlord walks into a human bar. Zyra raised a hand. No, not a hypothetical. If you truly believe in this power, then test it now. Dante blinked. How? Zyra tilted her head toward the Veltraxi warrior guarding the door, a hulking brute named Korth, who looked like he could crush Dante with one hand. Dante raised an eyebrow. You want me to make him laugh? If laughter is strength, then show me. Dante sighed, then stood up, stretching. All right, big guy, he said, walking toward Korth. Serious question. How do you Veltraxi keep your armor so clean? Korth's deep voice rumbled. We polish it with the blood of our enemies. Dante nodded, as if considering that. Then he grinned. Yeah. Well, humans use soap. Works pretty well, too. Silence. Zyra watched, waiting for Korth's reaction. The towering warrior just stared at Dante, his expression unreadable. Then, a snort. Dante froze. Korth's lips twitched. He tried to hold it back, but the chuckle escaped, deep and rough like distant thunder. The room went still. Zyra's eyes widened slightly. Dante threw up his arms. Boom. Proof. Korth quickly straightened, clearing his throat, forcing his face back into its usual scowl. It was unexpected, he muttered. Zyra's gaze flicked between Korth and Dante, something shifting in her mind. Fascinating, she murmured. Dante smirked. Told you. For the first time, Zyra didn't argue. She simply sat back, watching him with a new expression, one that looked a lot like realization. And Dante knew. The ice was cracking. Zyra Veloquin sat in silence, watching Dante as if he were some rare, unpredictable phenomenon. The Veltraxi had encountered many humans before, weak, defiant, desperate, but none quite like him. Dante had done something impossible. He had made Korth laugh. Even now, the towering Veltraxi warrior stood rigid, his expression once again blank, as if trying to erase the moment. But Sarah had seen it. She had felt it. Laughter had power. A different kind of power than strength or strategy. Something more elusive, yet no less real. Dante leaned against the table, arms crossed, his usual cocky smirk in place. Admit it, Zyra. That was impressive. She narrowed her eyes. I admit it was unexpected. That's step one, Dante said. Step two is realizing that humor is a tool just as much as a sword or a warship. Zyra studied him for a long moment. Then teach me, she said at last. Dante blinked. Wait, seriously. You claim laughter can be a weapon, Zyra said. If that is true, then I must learn to wield it. Dante grinned. All right, Commander Ice Queen. Lesson 1. Delivery. Jokes don't just work because of words. They work because of how you say them. Timing, confidence, and sometimes. He tapped his forehead. A little misdirection. Zyra nodded, absorbing his words like a student preparing for battle. Then show me. Dante rubbed his hands together. Okay, let's start simple. Repeat after me. Why did the human bring a ladder to the bar? Zyra's lips parted slightly, her voice smooth but stiff. Why did the human bring a ladder to the bar? Because he heard the drinks were on the house, Dante finished, grinning. Zyra blinked. Silence stretched between them. Dante sighed. See, that's where timing comes in. You gotta say the punchline with confidence, like you already know it's funny. Zyra frowned. Why would I assume it is funny if I do not yet know the outcome? Because that's what makes it work, Dante laughed. If you say a joke like it's a battle tactic, nobody's gonna laugh. You gotta sell it. Zyra exhaled, as if preparing for combat. Then she straightened her posture and repeated, because he heard the drinks were on the house. Dante clapped. Better. Still a little robotic, but we're getting there. Zyra glanced at Korth, who had been silently watching. Did you find this amusing? Korth shifted uncomfortably. I appreciate the attempt. Dante grinned. See, progress. Now, let's try something with a bit more personality. He leaned in. You ever heard of sarcasm? Zyra's eyes flickered with curiosity. I am aware of the concept. Good, because sarcasm is the Veltraxi of humor. It's sharp, strategic, and catches your enemy off guard. Zyra tilted her head. Show me. Dante smirked. All right. Imagine we're in a battle, and you just saved my life. Now, instead of saying, thank you, I say. He deepened his voice dramatically. Oh great, now I owe you one. Fantastic. Zyra's eyes narrowed. You express gratitude by pretending to be displeased. Exactly, Dante said. It's a way of saying things without actually saying them. Zyra was silent for a moment. Then, in a perfectly measured voice, she said, teaching a Veltraxi to laugh is such an easy task. This is going remarkably well. Dante's eyes widened. Then he burst out laughing. Holy crap, that was perfect. Korth's mouth twitched, as if holding back amusement. Zyra allowed herself a small, satisfied nod. Perhaps there is merit to your methods, human. Dante grinned. Told you. Now, let's see if we can get you to actually laugh. Zyra crossed her arms. Do not get ahead of yourself. But Dante saw it, the tiniest glimmer of amusement behind her violet eyes. The Ice Queen was melting. Dante leaned back in his chair, arms crossed behind his head, his trademark smirk firmly in place. Across from him, Syra Veloquin sat as composed as ever, her piercing violet eyes locked onto his face like a sniper tracking a target. The Veltraxi commander was nothing if not determined, and now that she had set her mind to learning the art of humor, she treated it like a battlefield strategy. "All right," Dante said, rubbing his hands together. "We've covered sarcasm, timing, and confidence, but there's one last element you need to master." Zyra raised an eyebrow. "And that is?" "Spontaneity," Dante said, grinning. "The ability to throw out a joke without overthinking it. Humor is about surprise. It's got to be quick and unexpected." Zyra considered this. Veltraxi warriors are trained to anticipate all possible outcomes in battle. "Yeah, well, jokes don't follow battle tactics," Dante countered. "Humor works because people don't see it coming." Korth, who had been silently observing from the side, gave a slow nod. "This explains why humans are so unpredictable in war." Dante chuckled. "See, now you're getting it." Zyra exhaled slowly, as if preparing for something far more dangerous than a mere joke. "Very well. Show me how to be spontaneous." Dante grinned. "All right. We'll do a speed round. I'll start a joke, and you finish it with the first thing that comes to mind. No thinking, no hesitation." Zyra narrowed her eyes but nodded. Dante leaned forward. "Okay, why did the alien refuse to fight the human?" Zyra's lips parted slightly. "Because the human was already fighting himself." Dante blinked, then he laughed. "Damn, that was deep. Not what I was going for, but I like it." Zyra straightened, a hint of satisfaction in her expression. "All right, next one," Dante continued. "What do you call a Veltraxi who's bad at battle?" Zyra's eyes flickered. "A historian." Korth let out a sudden snort. Dante clutched his chest. "Zyra, that was brutal." Zyra tilted her head. It was not meant to be an insult. "Historians serve an important role." Dante wheezed. "Oh, I know. That's what makes it so funny." Zyra looked to Korth for confirmation. The massive Veltraxi warrior gave a short nod, though there was clear amusement in his eyes. "Again," Zyra said, now fully engaged. Dante grinned. "All right. What's the worst thing you can say before a battle?" Zyra didn't even hesitate. "I have a plan." Dante nearly fell out of his chair laughing. Korth coughed into his fist to hide his amusement, but it was clear he was barely holding back. Zyra blinked. "Did I succeed?" Dante wiped a tear from his eye. "Zyra, that was perfect." For a moment, the Veltraxi commander sat still, as if processing the moment. Then something incredible happened. A soft chuckle. It was quiet at first, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Dante's eyes widened. "Wait, was that? Did you just?" Zyra straightened, her usual stoicism returning in an instant. "You are mistaken." Dante grinned like a madman. "Oh no, no, no. I heard that. You laughed." Zyra lifted her chin. It was merely an exhale. Korth, shaking with silent laughter, muttered, "It was a laugh." Zyra glared at him. "You will remain silent." Dante leaned forward, a victorious gleam in his eyes. "Admit it, Zyra. You're enjoying this." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, at last, she exhaled. "Perhaps." Dante grinned. "That's all I needed to hear." The Ice Queen was cracking, and Dante was going to break through. Dante leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching Zyra with a knowing smirk. She had laughed. It was small, barely audible, but it had happened. And now, no matter how much she tried to deny it, the evidence was clear. "You know, you don't have to fight it," Dante said, raising an eyebrow. Laughter is good for you. Thyra, seated stiffly across from him, narrowed her violet eyes. Veltraxi warriors do not waste energy on pointless displays of emotion. Pointless, Dant scoffed. Thyra, you command fleets, you lead warriors into battle, and yet you think morale is pointless. Korth, standing nearby, grunted in agreement. It is true, Commander. Humans are known for their ability to fight against impossible odds. Their humor, it fuels them. Zira exhaled slowly, as if suppressing the urge to argue. She knew Dante had a point. The humans were different from any species she had encountered. They were reckless, unpredictable, and absurdly resilient. And yet, in that absurdity, there was strength. Dante drummed his fingers on the table. Tell me something, Thyra. When was the last time you actually enjoyed something? No duty, no obligation, just pure enjoyment. Thyra hesitated. She searched her memories but found nothing recent. Her entire life had been spent in service to the Veltraxi Empire. From the moment she could walk, she had been trained to fight, to strategize, to lead. Enjoyment had never been a priority. I do not recall, she admitted. Dante sighed, shaking his head. That's tragic. No wonder you're so uptight. Cetera shot him a sharp glare, but Dante only chuckled. Relax, it's not an insult. It just means we have some work to do. Work. Thyra repeated, suspicious. Yep. Operation. Teach Thyra to have fun. Korth shifted uncomfortably. Human, I advise caution. A Veltraxi commander is not. Dante waved him off. Relax, Korth. It's not like I'm asking her to abandon duty or anything. I just think she could use a little perspective. Zira crossed her arms. And how do you propose to give me this perspective? Dante grinned. Simple. We're going out. Zyra blinked. Out where? Somewhere fun, Dante said mysteriously. Zyra and Korth exchanged glances. This was dangerous. Not physically. Dante was no threat. But his unpredictability had already proven to be a formidable force. Fine, Zyra said finally. But do not waste my time, human. Dante grinned. Trust me, this will be worth it. Later that evening, Zyra found herself in a setting she had never imagined. A human entertainment hub, filled with flashing lights, strange music, and an overwhelming sense of energy. What is this place? She asked, eyes scanning the chaotic scene. A human arcade, Dante said proudly. Think of it as a training ground, but for fun. Zyra frowned. Games? This is a waste of time. That's what you think now, Dante said, leading her toward a machine with glowing buttons. But give it a try. With great reluctance, Zyra stepped up to the console. The game seemed simple, defend against an oncoming alien invasion. It was, ironically, the opposite of her actual job. The game started. At first, Zyra was stiff, calculating every movement. But as the challenge increased, something changed. Her instincts kicked in. She moved faster, dodging, attacking, reacting without hesitation. Dante watched with satisfaction as Thyra became immersed in the game. For the first time, she wasn't thinking about duty or war. She was simply playing. When the game ended, Thyra stood in silence, staring at the screen. You just beat the high score, Dante pointed out. Zyra turned to him. There was no sarcasm in her voice, no hesitation. Just a simple question. What's next? Dante grinned. The Ice Queen was melting. Dante leaned back against the arcade console, arms crossed as he watched Zyra's expression. She stood there, gazing at the screen where her name, just 3 glowing letters, XOR, flashed at the top of the high-score leaderboard. She had beaten not just the game, but every other player who had come before her. Zyra exhaled slowly. Something inside her felt strange. It was not the usual rush of victory from defeating an enemy in battle. It was different, lighter, exciting, even. Admit it, Dant said, smirking. That was fun. Zyra turned to face him, her usual cold stare still present. But something was different now. It was softer. It was an effective test of reaction speed and decision-making, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Dant chuckled. Sure, if you want to make it sound all tactical. But let's call it what it is. You enjoyed yourself. Zyra hesitated. Enjoyment. That was not a word often associated with a Veltraxi warrior, let alone a commander. But as much as she wanted to deny it, she couldn't. The proof was right there in the rapid beating of her twin hearts, in the slight curve of her lips that she refused to acknowledge as a smile. Korth, who had been silently observing the entire night, stepped forward. Commander, I have never seen you so engaged outside of battle. Zyra looked at her second in command. If even Korth had noticed the change in her, then it was undeniable. Perhaps, Zyra said slowly, her words careful, deliberate, there is some merit in human recreation. Dant grinned. That's the closest thing to a compliment I've ever heard from you. I'll take it. She rolled her eyes. Do not push your luck, human. Dant raised his hands in mock surrender. Wouldn't dream of it. They spent the next hour moving through the arcade, playing more games. At first, Zyra approached each one as if it were a battlefield. Analyzing, calculating, searching for the most efficient way to win. But then, something changed. She stopped thinking so much. She started reacting, feeling. She let herself get caught up in the moment. And then, it happened. It was during a chaotic, fast-paced game involving rhythm and quick reflexes. Zyra was completely focused, her movements precise. Dante, playing beside her, struggled to keep up. Then, out of nowhere, he tripped over his own feet, sending himself crashing into a nearby console. The sound he made, half grunt, half yelp, was so ridiculous, so utterly human, that something inside Zyra cracked. Laughter. It started as a small chuckle, then another, then a full, unrestrained laugh. Korth's jaw nearly dropped. He had served under Zyra for years, through wars and victories, and not once had he heard her laugh. Dante, still on the floor, blinked in surprise. Then, realizing what had just happened, he grinned. Wait a second. Did you just laugh? Zyra clamped a hand over her mouth as if trying to push the laughter back inside. But it was too late. She had already broken her own reputation. Dante jumped to his feet, pointing at her dramatically. I knew it. The cold, untouchable Zyra actually has a sense of humor. Zyra composed herself quickly, straightening her posture, but there was no denying what had just happened. You are an idiot, Dante, she muttered. Dante smirked. Yeah, but I'm an idiot who made you laugh. Korth, still stunned, shook his head. Commander, this is truly a historic moment. Zyra sighed but didn't argue. Instead, she turned toward Dante. I suppose I should thank you. This evening was enlightening. Dante placed a hand on his chest, pretending to be touched. Wow, that almost sounded sincere. Zyra narrowed her eyes. Do not ruin it, human. Dante laughed. All right. But hey, if you ever want another strategic morale exercise, you know where to find me. Zyra glanced back at the arcade one last time. The cold warrior of the Veltraxi Empire had changed tonight. Just a little. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing.